Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Okay, great.
Welcome, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Theresa. I'm a graduate student at the Clinical Mental Health Counseling program at Molloy College, and I'm also an intern at the Mental Health and Wellness Center at Molloy College. And Professor Kellyanne Brady is the clinic director there and my supervisor. She put all this together for us tonight.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for that, Professor Brady. So before we start, I just wanted to welcome everybody and to go over a couple of things. If anybody has any questions, feel free. We'll talk a little bit about how you can chat with us and ask questions in a little bit. So just as a reminder, Professor Brady mentioned that it's best if we try to keep our mics on mute because some of the background noise can make it difficult for other people to hear what's being said. If you do have questions or comments, and I will ask you to engage later on, there should be a chat box option down at the bottom of your screen there where you can message either the entire group your comment or question, or if you're more comfortable, you can message Kellyanne privately. Oh yes, I should move the PowerPoint. Thank you, Professor Brady. Another suggestion that we have is to try and keep the questions relevant to our discussions today, but if you do have anything a little off topic, please feel free to message Professor Brady Kellyanne privately and we can incorporate anything that she might seem appropriate. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit now about why we're all here, and we are here to talk about coping with uncertainty and to get more familiar with coping strategies and managing stress and anxiety during difficult times, especially times like we're going through now together. Just as a side note, I really would love to encourage engagement in this group. So after I bring up some things in the presentation, I might pause just to give you some time to put in your questions or comment in the chat box. If anybody's having a hard time, just let us know and we'll try our best to help you out to make sure that you can interact as much as possible. So the discussion that we're going to have today, as I mentioned before, is going to be about the uncertainties of what we're all going through together now, the health crisis, our current pandemic, and any of the things that come along with this experience that we might be experiencing individually or collectively. If Kellyanne has anything else to mention there, that I'd invite that.
Yeah, so we're while we wait for some things to come up in the chat, or if anybody wanted to raise their hand, they felt more comfortable talking about it, just let us know. That is an option as well, and we can unmute your mics. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on right now. There's a lot of concerns that we have. This feeling of uncertainty just seems to be perpetuating, and I think that is scary, confusing. There's a lot of different emotions that kind of come up as we think about this uncertainty that we're experiencing, and it's very different and unique for everyone. And I think that's something that is important for us to consider as we talk to you about, what are the experiences that you're having? What are the experiences that are unique to your situation? So feel free to jump into the conversation through the chat, or if you want to raise your hand so we can unmute your mic, we could do that as well.
Thanks, Professor Brady. So I'd like to start the discussion off with this question that we have up on the screen, which are, what are some of the concerns and emotions that we are experiencing at this time? I'm going to give anybody a moment to enter that into the chat. Any emotions or concerns that we're experiencing right now. I see some of you typing. It makes me happy.
Okay, Susan, raise your hand. I'm going to unmute her mic. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, I kind of feel helpless because one of my closest friends' brother had passed away from COVID-19, and he was relatively young, I guess in his early 60s. And it happened so sudden and so unexpectedly. So, I don't know what to say to her. She's a very close friend and a colleague, and we were just saddened by the news just the other day. So I'm having trouble coping because my younger brother died last year from kidney disease. He was also a little younger than myself, so I really don't know what to say to her when I see her again. So I'm having trouble with that, and it's very shocking and tragic at the same time.
Yeah, first I'd like to say I'm so sorry for your loss and the loss of your friend's brother. I
Thanks.
understand how not knowing how to talk to them now is an added stress and concern. I see how that would make you feel helpless. Does anyone have similar experiences of helplessness or experiences of being able to speak to someone?
So Joanne added to the chat, there's this fear and a sense of helplessness, just as you were mentioning that. Helplessness is something that's very prevalent and pervasive right now. And Sophia added, so some of her concerns is, what will the economy and society be like in the next 3 to 6 months, a year from now? Will this be as bad as Great Depression? Which, I think it's a lot of these different concerns, and that also perpetuate this feeling of helplessness. It's like this sense of, I just don't know what to do.
Right. Joanne, I saw you raising your hand.
Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Let me unmute. On Joanne.
Losses of friends and co-workers, and it's just that sense of helplessness. You can't even grieve them properly. You can't even go and show your respect and your grief. So you're just stuck with the feelings with nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing. They're unprecedented times.
Yes.
These might be things that happen outside of the health crisis, but those are even difficult to manage. And now we're going through those things on top of
Yes.
the health crisis. It's definitely new territory. And I think coming to things like this and learning about different coping skills and management really is going to help carry you through this. Putting an effort in the way you are is going to help carry you through this, and it's going to carry you afterwards. And we talk a little bit later on about the different things that we can do to care for ourselves that will carry on after things start to not go back to normal, but things start to ease, quarantine eases.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm very sorry to hear about the losses.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to share about concerns or emotions you're experiencing right now? Thank you both for sharing. Ooh. Did I skip? Okay. So some of the things we mentioned already, stressors, loss is one of them. Some of the other things that we are experiencing as stressors might add on to the experience that we're having during the health crisis. And some of them are, you know, things that we might be dealing with regularly, like work responsibilities, but it's different now as an addition to going through the health crisis. So we have a couple of stressors listed here, but I'd love to hear if anybody is going through anything different than what we have listed here, in case someone else in the group needs to hear it. Increased media exposure is a big one. For 2020, for a health crisis in 2020, there's so much information being shared, and there's so many different ways for us to learn about what's going on. And there's such motivation for us to kind of tune in to learn what's going on. Overexposure can really be a source of stress, an added source of stress. Has anybody been experiencing stressful feelings around increased media exposure? The news, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, I see some nods. Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about those coping and management skills later on, but I'll touch on lightly. One of the things that we can control is how much media exposure we have, and being able to limit how much we do helps relieve some of the stress that we endure every single day. Some of the other stressors that are very common are work responsibilities or loss of work, illness or access to medical care, especially in populations who aren't able to receive care. The changing of family responsibilities. You know, we're spending a lot more time home now, and our routines are changing, our needs are changing. So are the level of responsibility. Isolation is a big one, especially if you don't live with anybody, if you don't have a roommate or family to live with. The feelings of isolation are added stressors. The ability to obtain necessities. Just going to the grocery store can be stressful. And loss of routine is the last one that we have written here, which I can really relate to. It kind of throws you off balance a little bit. It makes everything a little bit more difficult. And learning to make the adjustments that you need to thrive the best way you can really will help carry you through. I'm wondering if anybody here has any other stressors they'd like to add.
So Theresa, Sophia also added this general sense of uncertainty, too much information from the media, feeling bombarded by coworkers through technology.
Oh, yeah.
I agree with that last one. I think when you're in person with individuals in the workplace, you tend to, maybe they tend to wait a little bit longer, or maybe they compile some of the stuff and approach you at one time, but I feel like everything's an email. Everything's like, oh, let's have a Zoom meeting, which, something could have been 5 minutes, and then it turns into like an hour. So I do think that the technology related to work, although it's allowing many people to keep their jobs, stay at work, and continue to stay in somewhat of a routine, which is good. I think that there are a lot of stressors and negatives that come along with that. So maybe we can touch on setting some boundaries with that a little bit later on.
Absolutely. And what Sophia said really resonated with me as well. We're so much more accessible in a way, maybe not physically, but mentally. We are accessible through technology, and receiving 20 emails in 20 minutes is overwhelming. And of course, with every email you receive is an additional task to put on top of what we're already doing.
And speaking of technology, it's a bit of a side note, but this conversation also reminded me of like the very beginning when all of this started to happen, all the companies were changing their policies, and you were getting constant emails from random companies about their COVID policies and all of these things. So it was just like one bombardment after the other.
Yes.
Of this information that served as this reminder of this awful thing going on. So it was just, you couldn't escape it, even if you were trying to.
Right. Absolutely. I remember that in the very beginning, how my gym was changing its procedures. I have a toothpaste membership was changing the way it does things. Like every little thing was affected, and it was hard to escape, for sure. Thank you, Sophia. Does anyone else have anything to add? Yeah. All right. So that leads us to emotional responses, because what else comes after stressors other than emotional responses? So uncertainty can really bring up many different kinds of emotions, and not only different kinds of emotions, but different levels of those emotions. Some of them we have listed here are pretty common, but I encourage you to share if you have experienced anything that's outside of this list, or if it has been something in this list. But some of the things that come up with dealing with the stressors are fear and uneasiness. Uneasiness, I really think is something across the board right now. We're all going into territory that we're not familiar with, doing online group sessions or trying out new technology or calling people that you wouldn't normally call for assistance. That uneasiness is something that we constantly are overcoming. Frustration, especially with all this new technology, and sadness and anger and disappointment. I think disappointment is one that a lot of people are experiencing because it's the springtime, and how many of us had plans for weddings and parties, engagements, and they're all being postponed or canceled. And anxiety and worry, the things that really brought us here today. Does anybody have any experiences that they are going through specifically with any of these? And of course, you're welcome to share something that we don't have listed here. Professor Brady, I think one that I share with you kind of often is kind of what we talked about on the last slide of feeling overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Sudden, we have all of these responsibilities added to what we do normally. Yeah. And on top of learning and doing all the new things now.
Definitely. And Sophia also shared anxiety, being unable to shut off from work and responsibilities. So that's been something that has been difficult. And, you know, I think feeling overwhelmed and feeling this constant anxiety really takes a toll on us in so many different ways. It makes it, for me, it's been a difficulty focusing. And when I have this difficulty focusing, it turns into this feeling of like, sort of being unmotivated, but like more so like unmotivated to the point where like there's too much to do. So I guess it's like going back to being overwhelmed, but it breeds this like immobility.
Yes.
So I do agree with all of that.
Yeah. I hear a lot of things coming in surrounding work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of us are experiencing.
Absolutely.
I like the word immobility that you said, Professor Brady. I often say molasses junction. I'm just in a place where I'm stuck and I don't know which path to take. It's like I'm stuck in molasses until I can move forward.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. things are difficult. So why are we even trying to manage the way we feel? We all know it's difficult. It's going to be hard for a long time. Why is it important to keep trying? Before I go on, does anybody want to share any reasons why they think it might be important to keep trying to manage the way that we feel? Kellyanne, Professor Brady mentioned this a little earlier. Well, the main things are the way that stressors impact our mental well-being, our emotional well-being, and physical well-being. Handling all these different stressors coming in right now is really going to affect different aspects of our life, and being able to manage them is really what's going to carry us through. Like I said earlier, learning these coping skills and learning how to manage is going to be how we learn to combat the negative feelings that we're having to the stressors that we're experiencing. And we can really begin to live happier and try and be as positive as possible during these times.
Sophia added, it's in response to your question, she added for sanity. And I know that, you know, it's kind of funny, like when she added that, I kind of like chuckled a little bit, because I was like, it's true. It's like, you know, we get to this point of like, it's what other choice do we have? We have to maintain some sense of this sanity, so to speak. And Joanna also asked, if we don't keep trying, we will not be in a healthy place when this time is over. And I think that's really our hope and our ultimate goal with this group, is to help you be in a place where you're looking not so much just for survival now, but also to come out of this situation in a better place overall.
Absolutely. I hear that. I hear you when you say to maintain our sanity. And I hear you when you're saying that we need to carry this over afterwards, to maintain our sanity now and then afterwards. It's so on point. The slide mentions when this is over, you'll be thankful that you did take the time, that you came to sessions like this, that you put in the effort and sought out the positive aspects of this and took care of yourself, because you did all of this, you'll be in a better place. It'll support you down the road. And that kind of leads me to our next slide, which is self-care. I really think this last piece here, where it kind of talks about thanking yourself for what you're doing now, speaks to the core of what self-care is. So does anybody have an idea of what self-care is? I know it's a pretty common term used now. So of course there's that typical image that we all kind of pop into our mind first, of a candle and a bathtub and maybe painting your nails or some relaxing experiences. But I think that the core of self-care is that you're doing things for yourself now that will help you later. Mm-hmm. You're caring for yourself now, but it will help you later.
And we're adding, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
So in the chat, they're adding exercise, eating healthy, taking vitamins, definitely great suggestions to kind of take care of ourselves. And I think something here is that we focus a lot on the physical aspects of ourselves as care, and we don't often think about the emotional and mental aspects of that self-care. But even though they all tie in together and they're all very much related, I think a big part of this is making sure that you're touching on all different parts of this self-care plan.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we can even push it further than that. When you think about how you care for someone else, it isn't in those few ways. You think about all sorts of things. I'd like to push it to paying your bills, going grocery shopping, planning ahead, making your bed in the morning so you can get in it cozy at night, doing the things for yourself now that will help you relax and have a better sense of well-being later. Is there anybody here who has anything like that little that they do for themselves now that takes care of themselves later? Making the bed is always my go-to example because it makes me feel so good at home at night when I come home to a made bed.
I was reading something recently that spoke to making the bed in the morning. It's starting your day off with an accomplishment, and that can really perpetuate through the rest of the day. So it is a good suggestion.
Especially now that we're home all day, keep walking by it if it's not made. Or if it is made, it has a great impact.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important to consider how we treat other people and how we care for them, like I was saying before, but also with emotions. We are kind to other people, and that's how we care for them. We have to be kind to ourselves and care for ourselves too, using those same methods. If it works for other people, it can work towards ourselves as well.
So Sophia added, cleaning up the living room from the previous night helps her feel accomplished first thing in the morning, which is great.
I agree.
We got to take care of ourselves and this entity that we think of when we say ourselves. We also need to keep our surroundings good too, so that we feel like our surroundings are a reflection of our values and our goals and our beliefs.
I feel like that is especially true for those of us who have to care for other people too. Like you have to really be able to care for yourself before you can be there wholly for someone else.
It's like the something that's common in the mental health field as a metaphor is the mask on the airplane. You need to put on yourself before you help anybody else with that. So you need to make sure that you're doing well, that you're doing okay, and then you can help other people put their masks on.
Yeah, that's a great one. Such a clear example of self-care. So this slide is specific to the current situation that we're in, but it's also applicable to any crisis or challenging situation that might come up. It is so important in order to stay grounded and in reality in the situation that you're experiencing, to understand the facts, to really know what you're experiencing, and to have an accurate understanding of what's going on. The first part here is to just get as much factual information as you can. Put as much legwork in as possible to understand it, especially if understanding it is important to you, because sometimes ignorance is bliss, but this is important to know the facts. And it's important to get them from a reputable source, especially when it's something like a health crisis or a societal issue that we're all experiencing at once. We are referring to today to the CDC, the Center of Disease Control, and the World Health Organization. And while those organizations speak to our nation or our world as a whole, it's also important to stay in touch with our local sources of information, local news channels, local Facebook channels, groups like that, to help stay engaged. Because what our community is experiencing might differ slightly than what the nation is experiencing, and there are so many opportunities to help support your neighbors, and you can learn about them when you stay informed locally. The News Channel 12, I think, is where most people get their local news. And Facebook groups, of course, I am a part of Beautiful Baldwin, and that's how I've learned all about the efforts my community has been making masks and providing food, and just allowing for there to be a sense of solidarity and support among each other. Does anybody have anything like that they've been involved in?
You know, I'm wondering if many of you, maybe just with a show of nods, maybe found out about this group through your library. So I think that staying connected with local resources such as that can be extremely valuable, and not only provide you with local information, it helps you know what's going on in your community, and the library keeps you connected and makes you still feel like you have that resource to go to, and it's providing this this link back to your community during this difficult time of separateness.
Yeah, absolutely. I commend all of you for being here tonight and being connected with your library and utilizing that service. It's great. So I'm going to move on to, unless anybody has anything else they'd like to say, I'm going to move on to developing a sense of control. What do we have control over? When we feel out of control, it really feels as if we have control over nothing. But it's not always entirely true. It's important for us to name things that we know that we do have control over. Even the small things give us a sense of ability and accomplishment. I'd like to talk about a couple of the small things. We mentioned a few already that we can name that shows that we have control over something. We have a few listed here that are helpful suggestions and reminders of things that we could have control over, which are creating a schedule for yourself to maintain at home. Make a to-do list of all the things you've been putting off. That's key for me. I've definitely been doing that with schoolwork. And limit media consumption. We talked about that a little bit earlier. It's really literally in our hands. We can control how much media consumption we take on. As I'm saying that, I'm realizing there are so many jobs that probably put you right in there in media, and it's really difficult to avoid being connected with media, but for many of us, we are able to disengage. How are other people finding a sense of control during this time where we might not necessarily feel like we have control?
For me, something I learned during this period of time, since we've been talking a lot about work, or work's been coming up frequently, has been setting like clear, well, we'll say clearer working hours. They're not necessarily super always clear and consistent, but at least I guess I should say I set personal time more. So just due to the nature of this kind of work and the crisis that we're also working through with individuals, our schedules are kind of all over the place. So even if I have a 2-hour break between, you know, a group and a session or something along those lines, I'm scheduled that to be my personal time, and I shut off and disconnect during that time. So that's been one way for me to develop a sense of control. Especially because one thing that I feel it's very out of my control is my schedule. So I found a way to put control in that scenario.
Thanks for sharing, Professor Brady. Joanne?
Hold on one second.
Oh, no, we can't hear you yet.
Okay, go ahead, Joanne.
Okay, thank you. I can relate to what she just said, because at first, you know, working from home was so different. So I was so overwhelmed with the work that I was working triple the amount of time that I did, when I was at work. So now I've kind of put like a time limit on it. I'd work a few hours, take a break, do something else. I kept into a strict routine where I would get up and do what I would do if I were going out to work. I would get myself ready, I would exercise, I would have breakfast, and I'd put in a few hours and take a break, because it was getting so out of hand where I was like fragmented. Everything was fragmented. And I would find that instead of taking time to balance my life, it was just always work.
Yeah. It's easier to let those boundaries bleed.
Yeah. So the boundaries were important, just putting that balance back in.
Right. Right. I feel like your environment has a lot to do with helping establish boundaries. And when we're in one place all day, it's harder to keep them, to maintain them.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, how have you managed?
Excuse me?
How have you managed so far?
So, well, at first it was not easy. I really wasn't managing well, but now I put time limits. I try to, I spend certain amount of hours doing work, but then I got into a schedule where I, do what I have to do. I start to think of others that are isolated. So I make time to make phone calls. My mom passed away in December. So I help my dad. So I do like shopping for him and things like that. So, I try to take time for others, time for work, and time to read and do what I would like to do as well. It's very hard having a new routine all of a sudden, especially when you're isolated in one place. You lost your freedom to just go out when you want. Even going to the store is so stressful.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss with your mom.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that what you said really stuck out to me, that you are reaching out to other people and providing service to people that you know might need extra help or that are important to you. And I think that that's something that we can control, what we put out. I think that that's a great example.
Mm-hmm. I like that, yeah. Sophia has also mentioned still struggling with a sense of control and boundaries. Boundaries is a big part of what we have to work to control.
Right. Kellyanne, Professor Brady, I apologize for going back and forth.
It's okay.
Professor Brady, do you have anything to share regarding setting harder boundaries and routines?
I think it's just about listening to yourself and seeing, if you feel like you're getting drained in a certain area, maybe that's where those boundaries need to come into play, or where you need to start setting up more of a routine, or, something needs to be done differently. I think when you listen to yourself, your body is your best internal alarm system. So when you notice these changes, they could be like irritability, really any change in mood, not feeling well all of a sudden, headaches, fatigue, anything like that. Try and figure out what's going on, and then if you can identify it, make a change in that area. I know that Zoom fatigue was something that I was definitely feeling in the beginning, and now anytime I finish a meeting or a session or anything like that, I take some time. I try, and if it's nice out, which hasn't been great, but if it is nice out, I'll go outside, or I will, just walk around a little bit, take a break. Maybe if I have some time, read from a paper book, so that I can get a break from the screen time, because it has been pretty exhausting. So that was one thing. Like, I just knew that I was just exhausted and my eyes were tired and burning all the time. So I listened to my body and realized that's what it was, and then did something different.
So what I hear is that you're responding to how you're feeling based on different stimuluses and creating a routine around that.
Yep.
That supports you.
Definitely.
Yeah. Sophia, I hope that helps give you an idea of one of the ways that you could maybe start managing your schedule and boundaries. Does anybody else have anything that they want to touch on here? Helen and Joanna, I see that you're here and quiet. Please feel free if you have anything to say or add. Love to hear from you. So I think this is really important because, oh, did I miss a chat?
She said, sorry about that. She said, thank you. That does help. I've been getting headaches and neck pain some nights. It makes sense now. You can see if that makes a difference. And if that's not it, it might be something else. But, just keep tweaking your different things that you do just so you find what works better for you.
So there are some things that we might just not be able to control. And the health crisis is one of them. So it's important to consider accepting loss of control, letting go. What are some of the ways that we can work on acceptance? And I like some of the suggestions here on this slide. It says, try to take a different perspective to gain understanding of why this must change. I think a good example of this are as students who have been in class and they expect for a class to look a certain way, for you to be physically engaging with your professor. And now you can't do that. And you have to do everything online. And it's hard to accept that this isn't what you signed up for. But if you shift your view and understand that it's less about your experience of what you anticipated, and start to realize that not coming to class is for the betterment of society as a whole, and you are contributing to that, it helps pull out a positive thought, a positive feeling around this difficult thing that you're going through, and allows you to gain a sense of acceptance. That's something that my class has been going through a lot. That brings me to the next one, which is to look for positive sides of things that are impacting us negatively. Finding the silver lining, as Professor Brady likes to say, is really a really powerful way of helping shift your perspective and bringing light into a darker place. And this next one is so powerful to me, is to know that this is temporary. There are some things that you can't control, like the health crisis, that will pass. We will come out on the other side of this, and we'll have learned so much about ourselves, dealing with all of these emotions and stressors and going through it individually, but then also going through it together. We'll be learning about ourselves, and then we'll be learning about our community. And the last one is another one of my favorites. We touched on this earlier, is work on developing and understanding that the more we do now will help us in the long run. Like we were talking about for self-care. We care for ourselves now, it sets us up for the future. Learning the coping skills and the management skills now are going to help us not only during this time, but after. One of the coping skills that are definitely important now that we'll carry on later is connecting with others. And you have all done it today by coming to the session and engaging and listening and connecting with others. It is so hard to do social distancing, but thank goodness for technology. So we're all human, and we all have that deep need to be connected with others. And for some of us, it's easier. Some of us have people at home, and for some of us, it's not. And Some people are home alone. And technology really helps allow us to connect and supports us in that way. So well done on getting here. I think I saw some comments coming through. Should I pause?
Sure. So it was added that Sophia finds it hard to convince myself that this is temporary. She wonders that the repercussions will be with us for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a worry. And I think convincing yourself is very hard. But I think there might be a slight distinction that's possible there of like, this is hard and this is something that's going to be a long time and there are going to be repercussions. But at the same time, there's this still like a need of it's almost like not telling yourself it's going to be okay. It's more of like, it's going to be, period. If that makes sense, because going back to that acceptance just for real quick, I think something that is important is that what we're saying here is not that it's not important, not that we can't be upset about it. We're accepting that we're upset. So we're spending less time on the fact that we can't do anything about it and spending more time and energy on what we can do during this time and what we do have control over. And, I think, Sophia, your point is spot on. It's not going to be temporary. There's going to be things that are going to change, but we don't necessarily know what that is right now. And we don't necessarily know what that's going to look like. So one thing that we can do is just kind of, it's sort of like going with the flow and just making the adjustments as necessary, but it's going to be, so we let it be, and then focus on what we can do. But hopefully with some of the things that we are doing for ourselves, that helps us be prepared for those changes and those repercussions that do come down the road.
Thanks, Professor Brady. And Sophia, that's a valid concern, and it's a concern that I share. And the silver lining that I've been relying on is that things are not necessarily going to be the same. They are going to be different, but some of the ways that it's going to be different are going to be positive. We've really been pushed into a world of technology and a sustainable way of communicating. There's going to be things that are that will help build us as a society in whole. I hope.
And Sophia just added, thank you. That helps me reframe it into something more acceptable, and that's great. I'm glad that is helpful. And I think in a slide or two we talk about reframing a little bit or taking a perspective. So hopefully we'll get some more opportunity to talk about that as we go forward.
Yeah. Positive. Catching my finding where I am here. I just got a notification that my internet might be unstable, Professor Brady. So if you do lose me,
I'll jump in if anything happens. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, yes, this is great. So although we can't physically connect because of technology, there are so many different ways that we are able to make these human connections that we crave. And this is one of them, as we talked about before. But a lot of us have access to FaceTime and other webcam type applications like House Party or Zoom like we're doing now, and Messenger. My grandfather called me a messenger the other day. I was shocked and so relieved that he was able to use that. I hope you guys are able to utilize some of those tools too. It's been a great way to stay connected. Something simple as sending a text message or a quick phone call really can not only brighten the day of the person that you've called, but impacts you. It has a lingering effect when you do positive things, when you spread kindness, it builds you inside as well. The positive impacts last. This is a great one. I love the idea of connecting to organizations that are meaningful to you, that you typically are already connected with, and to see what ways you can support them during this time. I have a favorite one. It's Showing Up for Racial Justice, and they're doing a ton online right now. And that way you can feel connected to a cause that inspires you while you're in this mode, and learning new technologies and finding ways to connect with people and to feel a sense of fulfillment. Does anybody have anything like that that they're able to engage with during this time? I see you, Joanne.
Hold on one second. I'm coming.
Thank you.
Okay, Joanne, go ahead.
Yes, I've been involved with a spiritual formation group, and I've developed many friendships. And just Monday, we started having Zoom meetings to try to resume the meetings every Monday. And we're reading a book, and we're going to try to discuss the book. So it's giving us all something to do, and we're connecting with each other. It was just nice to see everyone.
Yes, oh, I love that. Book club online. Why not?
Yeah.
Love it.
Great.
Anyone else? Thanks for sharing, Joanne. So I did just get a notification that we're almost running out of time. So I'm gonna go to the next slide here, which I absolutely. This is from the World Health Organization, and it's so simple, and it's kind of what we've been talking about, but I like this because it brings an image to mind for when you're out in public or when you're engaging with anybody. Spread kindness, not germs. Show empathy towards others. Learn about the disease, which we talked about before. Adapt practical measures, washing our hands, social distancing, wearing masks, staying home. Those are the things that are going to help everybody get through this with the least amount of negative impact as possible. We were talking a little bit earlier about what it's like going to the grocery store, and the stress levels are so high, and you don't know what everybody is experiencing, but if you go into the situation with a sense of kindness, you're going to come out of it feeling a little bit better, and you might impact somebody else in a positive way. The slide on the right is also lovely. It's for engaging with loved ones. And we talked about this a little earlier about checking in with people and encouraging them to do things that they enjoy, and share World Health Organization information about anxieties, and for anybody who has children, providing common correct information about the health crisis. You have all brought up these things over the past hour regarding the different coping skills that we have. I loved hearing that so many of you rely on these as basic instincts on how to thrive during this time the best you can. Exercise is probably one of the easiest, but it's not necessarily the Jane Fonda running thousands of miles or dancing for hours and lifting weights all day. Just moving your body releases serotonin, dopamine, endorphins that increase levels and feelings of happiness that allow you to get through things like the health crisis and things like regular day work stresses. Journaling is such a great way to unravel all of these different thoughts and emotions that you're experiencing at one time, and allowing them to have clarity, listing them out, writing them down, and making sense of things piece by piece. When you're able to allow yourself to express it that way, you can, I love the idea of unraveling it, like a bunch of yarn stuck together and unraveling it into all the different colors of yarn separately. journaling really helps with that. And I love these physical ones of deep breathing and bringing in all of that oxygen and letting your body feel the effects of oxygen. And meditation, just like exercise, it doesn't have to be the typical image of meditation. You don't have to be in a Zen garden and do it for 60 minutes. You can have a minute or two of quiet time where you try to clear your mind and just listen to your breath, or listen to one thing at a time to help ease the effects of all of the stressors and things that you're thinking and feeling. And progressive muscle relaxation, I really wanted to try and go with this and try and do this with everybody, but we're running out of time. But it's a sense of feeling your body and the different muscles through your body and letting them relax one muscle at a time, from your toes to your calves to your belly to your shoulders to your head. It really has a full body and mental effect. Professor Crawford, should I continue going through the slides?
No, I think you can go. There's some other helpful coping skills through there that maybe we could just touch on really quickly.
In this slide here, right?
No, go past this one.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. So we could talk really briefly about positive thinking, because I think that this is part of that reframing that we were talking about before.
Right. I think this might be useful for this group based on a couple of things that you guys had shared with us, that positive thinking is so effective, being able to try to intentionally find a silver lining in something, like becoming an expert at technology and Zooming after all of this is over. And the suggestion here of gratitude journaling, I love, because it's so accessible. Really being able to take a moment and identify a few things that you enjoy or that you're grateful for, that you're thankful for. There are so many different prompts and gratitude communities online that you can seek out to help guide you if you are at a loss of where to start with gratitude. And I love this example of a photo journal, every day taking a picture of the same beautiful thing and seeing how it transforms and feeling how it affects you as time passes. It's on the bottom there. I know one example of somebody who takes a picture of a beautiful tree every day as it blooms through spring.
That would be me. When this all started, something that was, I realized it was going to be spring and all the trees were still bare and that we were going to be in this for a little while. So I decided to start taking a picture every day of this tree that I knew was going to have these big pink puffy blooms and would turn into a leafy tree. So it's been pretty interesting to get to be mindful of that and watch it each day. And when I look back, it makes me really happy and excited to do that.
I love it. Connecting with nature and also a deep sense of gratitude within yourself. So I wanted to try and touch on this really fast because I think it's important. But learning from our past. One of the most difficult things to remember is that we've all experienced some level of uncertainty, some level of fear, some level of sadness in the past, and we've managed. How have we managed? We can think about all the different resources we were able to tune into during those times and apply it now. Were you able to rely on friends and family? Were you able to rely on therapeutic means? What strength did you pull upon to get through it? And then now, as you're going through this, you can be mindful of the things that you did to help yourself manage and cope with all of the stressors and all of the anxieties that come up with the health crisis, and call upon them down the road if you ever experience any level of fear, anxiety, and uncertainty again. You'll have the tools to manage it. Professor Brady?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's awesome. And I think building resiliency is something that's important and a skill that we take from this time too. So the things that we learned from this period of time, things that work for us now, is one way that we become stronger and more resilient, so we can come out of this with that additional strength that we have.
Yeah.
And if I could just jump in here, Sophia, I responded to your message. If you want to send me your email address, I'll get you that information on progressive muscle relaxation for you.
Oh, great. So unfortunately, we are out of time. I appreciate everybody engaging so much today and sharing as much as they did. And I'm so grateful that each one of you made it here today. I'm so grateful, Professor Brady, that you invited me here and allowed me to exercise my skills as a counselor. And I wish everyone the absolute most well-being and best through this time and afterwards.
And Theresa, if you could just put up our info from the last slide.
That's right.
So our information's here. So if anybody wants to write that down, or have some of this information, even if it's just our email address, I'd be happy to share any resources or anything that we have. Or if you want more information on anything, or you want to get connected to us, or anything, definitely reach out. If you follow us on social media, we do a lot of Monday motivation and Wednesday wellness on our social media accounts, and we try to spread positivity and helpful wellness tips. So I'd love to have you guys follow us if that's something that you'd be interested in, and it'll be a way for you to connect to us and promote this wellness even after this group is over. And another thing I want to mention is we are going to be having a second group on the 7th. That's next Thursday at 1:30. So if you enjoyed today, please join us on the 7th. I'm just double checking the date. Yes, the 7th at 1:30. Same Zoom information. And in that group, we're going to be talking about practicing positivity. So if you enjoyed that aspect of it, you will certainly like that group as well.
If anybody has any questions about the services that the Mental Health and Wellness Center provides, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to give you some more information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Professor Brady.
All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for coming. Please feel free to reach out to us if you do have any follow-up questions. We are here for you. And I want to thank the library for having us and hosting us and collaborating with us on this and providing us the opportunity to connect with your community. So it's been really exciting and we've really enjoyed it. And thank you to Theresa for taking us through this journey to manage our feelings about this uncertainty that we've been experiencing. So I wish everybody a great night, and I wish everybody stay well, and hopefully we'll see you next week. All right.
Thank you for coming and having me.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice week.
Thank you.
Professor Beatty, should I hang on to you? Bye, Susan.
Bye.
Here.